Welcome, wherever you are in the world. I'm in Portland, Oregon. My name, who's your neighbor? My name was there a minute ago down in the corner. I'm Terry McGill. I mentioned Portland, Oregon, and we have guests on Who's Your Neighbor from so far around the world. Tonight, our neighbor is right here in Portland, but let me tell you how this show started. When COVID hit the world, what a change. Um, and I know you know it. I began to notice that I was seeing a different kind of post and a lot more frequently than ever on because I was spending a lot more time on Facebook because I wasn't able to get out and run around. People were experiencing a kind of loneliness, except for the people who were living with someone and the relationship worked as long as they both of them were away from each other for 8 or 10 hours a day. But COVID put people together more of the time than was good for them. I began noticing those, and some of the stories were just terrible. And a friend of mine said, you should start a show. And it took 3 months to come up with the name Who's Your Neighbor? Because that's what this is about. We don't know our neighbors. So this show, it's 30 minutes of talking with people, listening mostly every week. And it's about inclusivity. It's about connection. It's about learning about somebody else. I read a quote, and I've heard it before, but I read a quote, and you may have heard it too. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to find a space to speak. So their mind is not on what the other person is sharing. Their mind is on, okay, I've got a comment that I want to make, and as soon as they give me a pause, I'm going to dive in. Well, this show gives you the opportunity tonight to meet a teacher of the Red Road. And I am going to ask our engineer to bring Patrick on right now, and let's listen in. So, Patrick, I'm not really sure what the Red Road means or is. What is it to you?
Well, it's pretty simple, Terry. I've been making drums for 35 years, creating Native American drums and walking the Good Red Road. And I've also, the class I teach it combines the 12 steps of recovery because I've also, just this week, I celebrated 48 years without a drink of alcohol.
48 years.
48 years, yeah.
Happy birthday.
Well, it's one day at a time. So the Red Road is about the non-progressive Great Spirit. It's in a way the indigenous people have known, and I would say that you know too, because we're all indigenous. People say, well, the first people, well, one of the things I learned from natives is that I am the first and last of my nation, that each person is sovereign. And the Red Road to me is the four ridges of life, like those children and the elders in the native community. The children keep the elders alive because there's a correlation. The adults and the adolescents and those four ridges of life are real important, the four seasons, so to speak. And so we were talking earlier about.
So the four seasons, summer, winter, fall, spring.
Yeah, it's like the baby, the child, the adolescent, the adult, the elder, And then the fourth ridge of life is called the unborn. We go back to spirit, and then we come back. We do that every night, see. We die every night in our dreams. And so, and the same thing happens on each breath, is that those people who practice meditation is getting back in touch with the simplicity of being in the present moment, and how stress and anxiety and COVID and all the things we see on network TV that they call news that they're bringing us. What I've known is the Red Road and the 12 steps, you know, the happy, joyous, and free life of working the 12 steps of recovery, which most people with long-term sobriety tried shortcuts, but it didn't work. You have to take the steps. So working the steps is, it's about facing up to the problems not outside of you, it's inside. And Joseph Campbell calls that the hero's journey, see? The inward journey, and the going down to face the demons. And every recovering alcoholic knows that road well, because we take the road down and out. So I drank until I couldn't get drunk anymore. And then I couldn't get rid of the demons. The demons were still there. So they call that in Buddhism the dark night of the soul, or the realms of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. And so that's a good place to surrender, to deflate the ego, and to say, I can't stay sober, I need help. And so it's called the surrender, or the necessary, the radical acceptance that of myself, I can't do this anymore, I need help. So that's a reaching out. And so I got an angel when I reached out that came, and that's what happens when the student's ready, the teacher appears. But as long as the false pride is out there, which is, oh, I can handle this, I know. The natives have taught me that I've got so much power that I can do on my own, but when I hook up with the spirit, or the chi, or the ki in Aikido, and the chi in Tai Chi, it's like there's a power much greater than me. And in recovery, they talk about the short version of the 12 steps is face up.
The short version of what?
Of the 12 steps of recovery.
Ah, okay.
There's 12 steps that you take.
Right.
And the only one that you can do perfectly is the first step. And that says,
what is that first step?
I admitted I was powerless over alcohol, that my life was unmanageable.
That's powerful.
But you can substitute, I admitted I was powerless over Facebook. I admitted I was powerless over Terry. People, places, or things. Like the powerlessness has to be followed by a willingness. So it's kind of like the demons of recovery, or walking the black road, which is thinking that money is going to make us happy or change our lives, because we don't have our values in order, you know, like what we hold sacred. But as you get older, when you get our age, you start reflecting on, well, what's life really about? It's about meeting people you haven't met, because there's some amazing stories out there in the world. And I came from the bottom on the streets of Portland back in the 70s, unemployed and unemployable. And But I had this ego saying, well, I'm just doing a little research down here on the dark side of life. I'm going to write a book one day. And I was in complete denial that I had a problem. So they call that false pride, which is the first thing that's born out of self-centered fear, which is, and that's what they say, alcoholics are egomaniacs with inferiority complexes.
I love it.
So when you relax, the natives say, when you relax, spirit comes in. If you're all stressed out, you're pushing spirit out and you're into self-will. And you can easily be overcome when you're only relying on your strength. But, as I make these different animals, like elk is known as stamina and endurance. So drumming with an elk drum will give you, when you can't go any further, that's when your prayer starts. That's when you call on elk. So there's different ways that I say, help me make it through the day, Creator. Give me my food. And like, I take cooking pretty seriously these days. I get up and prepare my meal and make prayers and go out and get in my hot tub and do that morning baptism. That to me is a holy part of it. I'm double Scorpio, so I'm a water sign. So Scorpios tend to get to the bottom of things. So making drums, when I got sober back in 1975, some people said, you got a lot of talent. You ought to go back and get your degree and become a counselor. So I went back and got my degree and went into grad school and got a master's in counseling psychology. And I thought, I love helping others get sober. And I thought, well, I'd love to do that as a profession. And I didn't realize, I had a pipe dream, so to speak. But I didn't last long in the system of a counselor, because I spent all my time filling out treatment plans and dealing with non-motivated clients that didn't really want to get sober. They were just playing the system to get their welfare checks. So I knew it really helped me because I went through grad school and I worked on myself. And I said, I never saw so many sick people that are in graduate school. But I learned a lot, and I was ready to learn because I'd found something I wanted to do. But I'd flunked out of college before because I wanted to party. See, because they say alcoholism is the only disease with a fun phase. So, and AA says it's the most expensive club in the world, but you pay your dues before you get there. So I had to lose everything. I had a wife. I had a job, a real nice job, and I lost everything. I lost my home, and I was in Damage State Hospital out there in Wilsonville for 45 days.
Wow.
So they say you got to hit bottom. It's a good place to build from. So I got my dad found me out here drunk and sent me money to buy a car, and I hired somebody to drive me back to West Virginia. And back in 1973, I think. I'd been out here for 2 years and lost the job I had. Nobody could hire me because I couldn't stay sober. It was just an obsessive compulsive disease that no human power can rescue you from. So I call it a divine intervention, that your angels are always looking after you. But sometimes
So the Red Road teaching that you just started last week, what are you doing with that?
With the Red Road, see, the whole purpose of working the 12 steps is to prepare yourself to live a life of service, to help people. That's what giving is about, and loving. And the church's work is to spread love. That's what Jesus told us. You know, all the spiritual masters said it's not love, it's loving. It's how are you Patricking down there, or how are you being the best Terry you can be, and not trying to be anything else except who you are. So the Red Road teaches you uh, to walk the path of the heart, and the the first the heartbeat is the drum. So we spend 9 months in Mama's belly listening to that drum. It's our drum inside our heart, and our Mama's drum, our mother's heart. So they say we all know what our destiny is when we're in that womb, and we know why we're here, and we're not sure we want to come out, but we signed up for it. So
So your Red Road program, you're doing that every week on Zoom?
I do it to prepare for the sweat lodge ceremonies that we do out in Carson, Washington. I have 20
Uh-huh.
acres out there, and so I've kind of combined work, play, love, and support. You know, uh, what is a man's balanced life? You know, it's not working all the time for sure. There's a lot of workaholics. So I was an addictions counselor, and there's not just alcohol. That was my addiction, but I was also there's sex addiction, there's work addiction, there's addiction to it, intensity. There's a so I was being curious and being a therapist, especially a Gestalt therapist, which focuses on your point of power is this very moment. So it teaches us to stay in today, that I can stay sober today, but I could never stay sober forever. So the Red Road is walking the path of the heart and following what has heart and meaning. And when you're an elder like we are, you've got some things to share. You got some stories. You know, I've been through a few storms in my 82 years,
And a real dark night of the soul.
and I've faced those demons. And the native says you build altars. You know, you don't try to repress the dark side. You acknowledge it because it's part of who we are. See, we're light and dark. We're not either or. So the natives taught me how to build an altar, you know, how to hold something sacred, and how they carry that pipe, you know, and that bowl is said to be the woman, and the stem is supposed to be the man. So you join those together. It's just like whatever you pray for will be given. So, and in recovery, they say you pray for Spirit's will for you, and that not your will, because my best thinking got me drunk.
Yeah.
So it's using my mind, but also coming to my senses. And you know, you do a lot of readings, and you live in that clairvoyant, that magical side, which is the artist side. It's not the logical, but when you run a business, you have to have balance because I'm the janitor, I'm the shipping manager, the marketing manager, the manufacturer, and you know, you got to wear a lot of different, exercise a lot of facets. And I said, I can do this. I can not only do it, but I can do it with joy, ease, and grace. And saying, "Wow, I'm so privileged to have my own life that I don't get to blame anybody if I don't make any drums. I don't make any money." So, but I'm teaching more. I'm going into teaching people how to make a drum and maybe giving them some tools that I've had. You've got a lot of tools too. It's like who doctors the doctor, who interviews the interviewer. Yeah.
So your Red Road, the meeting that you started last week, is that are you going to be doing that every week, or is that just in preparation for Sweat Lodges?
Well, what I've been doing in the past, I hate to. I think ritual is real important in our lives and ceremony. So on these equinoxes and solstices, we do ceremonies.
Uh-huh.
We'll do the summer solstice ceremony, and we'll do the west, which is the water, the fall, the going within time, and then we do the winter solstice ceremony on the winter solstice. And so my business closes when I'm doing ceremonies because I've got this place in Portland. I've also got 20 acres next to a beautiful creek out there in Carson. And I can go out there and get away from the city. And that's where I like to take people to make drums because there's something about nature that heals people. And
How often do you do your drum making courses or classes?
well, I'm always making drums, but I like to do weekends, get people out for maybe 5 days, 3 to 5 day workshops. And sometimes we make those big grandmother drums, those big double-sided drums that they use at the powwows.
Is
And
that's that big one that I saw there in your store?
yeah, so we'll have a workshop to make one of those. The drum and the stand, that's part of the workshop. It's learning to work with your hands and to create a beautiful thing like a drum. Because I had been a stockbroker in New York and a therapist, but I'd never done anything with my hands. I wasn't a mechanic. I know nothing about technology, but I know how to make a drum. And I have other skills, but being in recovery and walking the red road are the path of the heart. They both give you promises. If you work the steps and then do purification ceremonies, it's a spiritual path. It's not a religious path. My religion's fly fishing. So it's like anything that nature is spirit's tranquilizer. So I have found it's wonderful to have a place in the city, where there's a lot of intensity in Portland. It's getting more and more intense. And it's great to have a beautiful drive through the Columbia River Gorge, across the Bridge of the Gods, and to go into another realm of a place where you don't have to lock your doors and it's pretty safe. I got neighbors that know me and I've given them all drums and it's like
friends for life. Give them a drum.
Well, that's what my relatives did from back in West Virginia. Say, my grandpa always had a garden and he'd always be around feeding the poor people. Because what are you going to do with your excess? You don't hoard it.
Right.
You share it. And that's what I teach because people get afraid with COVID and the spells that are put on them about, oh, you got to get this vaccine, you got to do this, you got to do that. The older you get, the wiser you get, hopefully.
So, do you have your next drum making weekend scheduled?
Yeah, I have that all on my website, which is Oh, it's shown right down there. See,
Right.
you can
Our
sign
engineer had just posted that. So
up.
all listeners, if you didn't notice it, just look down there at the bottom.
Yeah,
CedarMountainDrums.com.
that's our site, and we announce all of the things that we do, including the classes and the ceremonies. And we don't have room for a whole lot of people, but we think it's worth sharing with these classes.
And you also have a Facebook page, and that's down there at the bottom also. Facebook.com/Cedar Mountain Drums.
The Mountain Drums, and you can get all the classes and the Zoom things we do, and what we're up to.
That's great. So the Red Road teaching that you were doing last Thursday, was it?
Yes.
Are those going to continue?
Yes, they continue where I continue to weave the two roads, which are actually one road, which is staying in my hoop, the drum hoop. And the Sacred Tree is the book that I use, which is a very beautiful book about the tree and its spiritual significance, that almost every spiritual path has a tree, the Bodhi tree of the Buddhists. But the Iroquois had the sacred tree that everyone gathered around and had 100 years of peace. And there's certain gifts that we get if we work for them. And that's pretty much the Red Road. It's you can be happy, but the Black Road is alcohol and drugs and recreational use. And so I teach just different paths. It's how I found my way out of the lower world. And I have my business and the beautiful wife that helps me run it. And we're
always nice to have a partner.
Yeah, and we both do what we like doing, is creating beauty. You musicians know that, and artists, poets, podcasters. We all have our genius.
So you're going to be doing a sweat lodge soon, then?
Well, I'm not sure I'll be doing it, but I'm preparing people for it. Because
Got it.
At 82, I like to participate, but I also listen to my body. And I've trained some younger people that have been in the lodge with me to do the ceremonies. And it's mostly about preparing. The classes are all about preparation, which is always 90% of ceremony. Like we do our New Year's resolutions and all that, but this is about this time of year is about planting the seeds or figuring out what you're going to plant, what you're going to harvest in the fall, setting your intentions. So all that's part of what I teach.
Super. Well, Patrick, I'm fascinated by not just your story, but all you have created, how you've created yourself, who you are, what you do, giving out. And for our watchers and listeners, whether you're live on Facebook right now, I don't see anybody live on Facebook tonight. Usually we get very few, but within about a week or two, there's been 100 or more views. And then, of course,
word gets out.
It does. Yeah. And so people are going to be able to connect with you because our engineer has posted your web page and your social media site. And here it is on the bottom of the screen again, but it's also over there in the chat. So if you're watching this in the future, then just look in the chat and check out Patrick He's got a web page. He's got a Facebook page. And check out the Red Road. If you're in the Portland area, check out the drums. Patrick, how many drums do you have there right now?
Oh, I usually keep over 100 drums in stock. And
Wow.
about half of them, I love art too, so we have painted drums. I paint drums and rattles. And it's a chance to use your hands, which connects you with your heart. So playing,
As the drums do too, right?
yeah, play. Like that's the thing that we elders sometimes forget to play. We get too much in front of screens.
Well, I have appreciated the playful spirit in the times that I've shared with you. And I'll be coming back over whenever you get my drum sewed back together.
Get it stitched back together.
Say what?
Get it stitched back together.
Yeah. So, Patrick, I want to thank you again. And for our viewers, Patrick Pinson, Cedar Mountain Drums, look over in the chat area and you can find his webpage. You can find his Facebook group, and you can check out the Red Road. If you're looking for a drum, I was in his shop just a week or 10 days ago, and there's too much for me to take in one visit.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Good
and
work.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
So I'm Terry McGill, and this has been episode, 45 of Who's Your Neighbor? If you have a fascinating person that you know who doesn't just sit in the kitchen and knit, nothing wrong with that, but who reaches out, who affects other people, would you let me know about it? And you can connect with me at Terry McGill. See, where's my name? It's not on up. There we go. Terry McGill at Comcast.net. COMCAST, like truck, .net. And until the next time, thank you so much for spending some time with us.